What if everything we thought we knew about history was missing crucial pieces of the puzzle? Hidden within ancient maps lie secrets so astonishing, they shake the very foundations of modern understanding. These aren't just faded drawings on parchment, they're time capsules, revealing knowledge that shouldn't exist, landscapes mapped centuries before their supposed discovery, and even glimpses of advanced civilizations lost to time. Today, we're diving deep into 25 of the most unbelievable ancient maps ever uncovered, each one a mystery waiting to rewrite what we thought was possible. Picture this, a map drawn in the 1500s that shows Antarctica ice-free, or a medieval chart pinpointing islands no explorer had reached yet. How could cartographers from thousands of years ago depict continents with impossible precision, long before satellites or even compasses? These aren't mistakes, they're deliberate, jaw-dropping clues hinting at forgotten technologies, lost voyages, or knowledge passed down from civilizations we've barely begun to understand. Some of these maps even suggest that our ancestors knew far more about the world, and perhaps the cosmos, than we've ever given them credit for. This journey isn't just about ink and parchment, it's about unraveling the threads of history itself. Who were these map makers, and what incredible sources did they rely on? Were they tapping into wisdom from even older, more advanced cultures? As we explore these 25 enigmatic artifacts, you'll witness coastlines drawn with eerie accuracy, stars plotted with mathematical perfection, and lands that mysteriously vanish from later records. By the end, you'll question not just the maps but the very timeline of human achievement. So, let's step into the shadows of the past, where every line, every symbol holds a story begging to be told. The truth is out there, hidden in plain sight if you know where to look. The Piri Reis Map of 1513 isn't just another relic from the age of exploration. It's a bombshell that defies everything we thought possible about early cartography. Created by an Ottoman admiral named Piri Reis, this map doesn't just sketch the known coasts of Europe and Africa with startling detail. It shows something far more inexplicable, the northern coastline of Antarctica free of ice. Here's the problem. Antarctica wasn't officially discovered until 1820, over 300 years later, and its icy shield, scientists confirm it's been buried under miles of frost for at least 6,000 years. So how did a 16th century navigator map a continent no one had seen, in a state no human could have witnessed? Theories swirl like storm winds around this mystery. Some researchers suggest Piri Reis had access to ancient source maps, perhaps from the Library of Alexandria, a treasure trove of lost knowledge burned to ashes centuries earlier. Others point to the map's eerie alignment with modern seismic surveys, which reveal Antarctica's true coastline beneath the ice. Could earlier civilizations, long forgotten, have explored the globe with technology we've yet to uncover? The map's own inscriptions hint at this, with Piri Reis crediting the maps of the ancients for his work. But the anomalies don't stop there. The map's grid uses a spherical trigonometry system far ahead of its time, suggesting an understanding of the Earth's curvature that shouldn't have existed in the 1500s. Even more bizarre, it includes mountain ranges in Antarctica we've only confirmed with 20th century technology. Skeptics argue it's coincidence or artistic license, but the precision is too uncanny to dismiss. Could this be evidence of a pre-Ice Age civilization with maritime capabilities rivaling our own? Or did fragments of advanced knowledge survive through secret channels, only to resurface in the hands of a curious Ottoman cartographer? One thing's certain, the Piri Reis Map doesn't just redraw geography, it redraws history, and this is only the first stop on our journey. The Piri Reis Map doesn't just baffle historians, it ignites fiery debates that split experts into opposing camps. On one side are those who see it as undeniable proof of pre-modern exploration, a relic of knowledge passed down from an advanced ancient civilization. They argue the map's accuracy, particularly its depiction of Antarctica's ice-free coastline, is too precise to be a lucky guess. Modern satellite surveys reveal shocking overlaps with the map's contours, suggesting its creators had access to data we'd assume impossible for their time. Some even propose that lost seafaring cultures, like the hypothetical Atlantis or a forgotten global maritime network, could have charted these lands millennia before recorded history. But skeptics strike back with equally compelling counterarguments. They dismiss the ancient source theory as romantic speculation, pointing out that the map's errors, like distorted South American coastlines, prove its human fallibility. Could the so-called Antarctica actually be a misdrawn Patagonia or an artistic flourish? One prominent critic, a cartography professor from Cambridge, insists the map's ice-free landmass is just a cartographer's amalgamation of rumored southern lands, a common practice in an era when myth and geography blurred. The debate intensifies when modern technology enters the fray. In the 1960s, a team of researchers used computer analysis to compare the map's grid to ancient coordinate systems. Their findings, the map's longitude placements, were eerily accurate, something Europeans supposedly hadn't mastered until the 18th century. Yet detractors note that Piri Reis himself credited Columbus's voyages as a source, muddying the waters. Could the map be a patchwork of stolen knowledge mixed with genuine pre-Columbian discoveries? Then there's the chilling twist. A few maverick geologists suggest the map aligns with Antarctica's topography as it would have appeared 12,000 years ago before the ice caps sealed it away. If true, this implies the existence of a civilization capable of global exploration during the last ice age, a notion mainstream archaeology flatly rejects. As scholars clash, one thing becomes clear. The Piri Reis Map is either a mosaic of forgotten truths or the most elaborate cartographic coincidence in history. And while the controversy rages on, the map sits quietly in Istanbul's Topkapi Palace, its secrets still teasing us from across the centuries. The Vinland Map stands as one of history's most tantalizing and hotly contested artifacts, a single sheet of parchment that could rewrite the story of European contact with the Americas. Discovered in the 1950s, this medieval-style map depicts not only Europe and Africa, but also a landmass labeled Vinland, west of Greenland, aligning with Norse sagas that describe Leif Erikson's voyages around the year 1000. If genuine, it would be the oldest known map showing any part of the Americas, predating Columbus by nearly 5 centuries. But from the moment it surfaced, the map has been shrouded in suspicion, sparking a forensic battle that pits cutting-edge science against historical intrigue. At first glance, the evidence seems compelling. The map's style matches 15th century cartography, and its depiction of Greenland's coastline shows knowledge only Norse settlers would have possessed. Even more striking, the Latin inscription beside Vinland describes it as a land discovered by Bjarni and Leif in companionship, directly referencing the Icelandic sagas. Supporters argue this couldn't be a lucky guess. It had to be drawn by someone with access to Viking accounts, but critics pounced on inconsistencies almost immediately. The parchment, while old, showed signs of reworking, and the ink raised red flags. When scientists analyzed it in the 1960s, they found traces of anatase, a titanium compound not used in medieval inks. This seemed like a smoking gun, proof the map was a modern forgery, yet the debate refuses to die. In 2018, advanced scanning technology revealed that the anatase might have formed naturally over centuries, not as a deliberate additive. Even stranger, the map's wormholes match those in a genuine 15th century manuscript it was once bound with, suggesting it wasn't inserted later. But then came another twist. Linguistic scholars noted that the Latin script includes phrases and abbreviations more typical of 20th century academic writing than medieval monks. The ink's carbon dating, meanwhile, lands in a frustrating gray zone somewhere between 1420 and 1550, but with margins of error wide enough to leave room for doubt. What emerges is a puzzle with no easy answers. If the Vinland Map is real, it's a priceless record of Norse exploration, lost for centuries and rediscovered by chance. If it's a forgery, it's an astonishingly elaborate one, crafted with enough historical nuance to fool experts for decades. Some theorize it could be a Renaissance-era copy of an earlier Viking map, blending truth with artistic license. Others suspect a talented 20th-century con artist, perhaps inspired by the publicity around the Norse discoveries at Elland's Ork's Meadows in the 1960s. The Vinland Map forces us to confront how easily history can be manipulated or misunderstood. Whether genuine or forged, it captures our longing to find proof of pre-Columbian exploration, a relic that blurs the line between myth and reality. And as technology evolves, so too might the verdict on this enigmatic document. For now, it remains a paradox, a map that could either illuminate the past or expose how desperately we want to believe in it. The Cantino Planisphere isn't just a map, it's a stolen masterpiece of espionage, a snapshot of global power struggles etched onto calfskin. Crafted in 1502, this Portuguese treasure reveals Brazil's coastline with shocking precision, years before the country's official discovery. But here's the twist: it wasn't made for kings or explorers. It was smuggled out of Portugal by an Italian spy named Alberto Cantino, who bribed a royal cartographer to hand over secrets that could shift the balance of European dominance. This wasn't just cartography, it was high-stakes corporate espionage, Renaissance style. At first glance, the map dazzles with its artistry, vivid blues and golds tracing Africa's bulge, the Indies, and the newfound lands across the Atlantic. But the real bombshell lies in its details. Brazil's eastern coast, labeled Land of the True Cross, mirrors reality with near-modern accuracy, complete with river mouths and capes. Yet, according to history books, Portuguese explorer Pedro Álvares Cabral only stumbled upon Brazil in 1500. So how did this map depict it so meticulously just 2 years later? The answer lurks in the shadows of Portugal's Costa da India, the tightly guarded repository where explorers' logs were compiled into state secrets. The Cantino affair exposes the brutal race for colonial riches. Portugal, desperate to monopolize the spice trade and New World claims, enforced a policy of silence. Leaking maps was treason. But rival Italy, hungry for a slice of the empire, paid Cantino the modern equivalent of millions to infiltrate Lisbon's cartographic inner circle. His success devastated Portugal's leverage. Overnight, the planisphere became a cheat sheet for Spain, France, and Venice, igniting a scramble for territories not yet fully claimed. But the map's secrets run deeper. Some scholars spot anomalies like the oddly truncated Caribbean, as if censored to hide Portuguese navigational breakthroughs. Others note the Tordesillas meridian, the papal line dividing the globe between Spain and Portugal, is deliberately skewed. Was this a cartographer's error or a sly move to legitimize Portugal's encroachment into Spanish territory? The Cantino Planisphere didn't just map land, it mapped greed, betrayal, and the birth of modern geopolitics. Today, it sits in an Italian library, a silent witness to the moment geography became a weapon, and the world's first known case of map theft rewrote history's winners and losers. The Tabula Rogeriana shatters every stereotype about medieval maps being crude or fantastical. Created in 1154 by the legendary Arab geographer Al-Idrisi, this monumental work of science presents the known world, from Iceland to the Malay Peninsula, with a level of precision that would embarrass European cartographers for centuries. Commissioned by King Roger II of Sicily, a ruler obsessed with collecting the world's knowledge, the map wasn't just drawn, it was engineered. For 15 years, Al-Idrisi cross-referenced Greek, Islamic, and Viking sources, interviewed travelers from every corner of the globe, and even sent his own teams to verify coastlines and trade routes. The result, a staggering 3-meter-long silver disc etched with rivers that bend at scientifically verified angles, mountain ranges positioned by astronomical calculations, and cities placed according to their exact longitudinal coordinates. While European monks were sketching symbolic TO maps, crude circles dividing the world into 3 biblical continents, Al-Idrisi was plotting trade winds, ocean currents, and even cultural notes about distant peoples. His depiction of the Nile's source aligns with modern surveys, and his rendering of the Caspian Sea corrects ancient Greek errors that persisted in Western maps for another 400 years. But perhaps most revolutionary was his grid system. Unlike the distorted, faith-based projections of his European contemporaries, Al-Idrisi organized the world into 70 rectangular climatic zones, each meticulously documented in his accompanying book, The Pleasure of Him Who Longs to Cross the Horizons. Critically, the Tabula Rogeriana didn't just catalogue geography, it revealed a network of global connections medieval Europe barely grasped. The map shows Chinese ports bustling with Arab merchants, African kingdoms flush with gold, and the Volga River as a nexus of Viking and Silk Road trade. Yet it also exposes blind spots. Al-Idrisi, like all scholars of his time, believed the Indian Ocean was landlocked, a theory Ptolemy's influence kept stubbornly alive. What makes this map truly humbling is its legacy. Copies circulated secretly among European elites for generations, with explorers like Columbus allegedly studying its insights. Today, only 10 fragments survive, but they stand as a testament to a truth we often forget. The so-called Dark Ages were only dark for those who couldn't see the light of knowledge shining from the Islamic world. The Tabula Rogeriana isn't just a map, it's a bridge between civilizations and a silent rebuke to anyone who thinks history moves in a straight line from west to east. The Ming Hun Yi Tu shimmers at the crossroads of empire and imagination, a Ming dynasty masterpiece where cartography collides with celestial symbolism. Created in 1389, just decades after China threw off Mongol rule, this 6-foot-wide silk map doesn't just chart territory, it proclaims a reborn empire's cosmic ambition. At first glance, the borders bristle with mythic creatures, dragons coil around the edges, phoenixes guard the corners, and the entire world floats on an ocean teeming with serpents. Yet peer closer and the precision stuns. The coastlines of Korea and Japan align with near-modern accuracy, while the Great Wall snakes across the north in meticulous detail, proof that Ming surveyors had mastered scale and distance long before European explorers. What makes this map revolutionary isn't just its blend of art and science, but its worldview. China sits triumphantly at the center, radiating influence through concentric rings of vassal states and barbarian lands. The Indian subcontinent dangles disproportionately small in the southwest, while Europe, labeled merely as Franks, is relegated to a distorted western fringe. This wasn't geographic ignorance, it was ideological design. The Ming Hun Yi Tu wasn't meant to guide sailors, it was political propaganda, a visual manifesto declaring China's supremacy in a newly reordered post-Mongol world. Yet the map's true genius lies in its layers of coded knowledge. Rivers flow with annotations describing local customs, while desert caravans trace routes matching Silk Road archaeological finds. Most astonishing, the depiction of Africa's triangular southern tip, a shape Europeans wouldn't document for another century. Some scholars argue Arab traders supplied these details, pointing to the maps labeled ports on the Swahili coast. Others note Tibetan monasteries appear with uncanny precision, suggesting imperial spies smuggled back intelligence from the Himalayas, but the dragons aren't just decoration. In Ming cosmology, they symbolized the emperor's mandate to rule all under heaven. By framing the known world within their coils, the map's creators wove a powerful illusion that even the farthest lands, no matter how inaccurately placed, existed to serve the Son of Heaven. This wasn't geography as we understand it, it was geography as performance, a theatrical stage where China played the starring role. Today, the Ming Hun Yi Tu survives as both triumph and taunt. It flaunts China's early mastery of geospatial thinking while exposing how easily maps can bend reality to power's will, a lesson as relevant now as it was 6 centuries ago. From myth to mathematics, the leap between the Babylonian world map and Ptolemy's geography reveals how drastically human understanding of the world transformed in just a few centuries. The Babylonian clay tablet, crafted around 600 BCE, isn't a map as we'd recognize it today. It's a cosmic diagram, a circular slab etched with cuneiform where Babylon sits proudly at the center, ringed by a bitter river and surrounded by triangular regions labeled with mythic beasts and distant cities. This wasn't a tool for navigation but a theological statement, a depiction of the universe as Babylon's priests saw it, where geography blurred with legend and the edges of the earth dissolved into the unknown. Yet even in its symbolism, there's startling realism. The Euphrates cuts vertically through the center, and nearby Assyria and Susa appear roughly where they should be. It's as if the map whispers, here's what we know, and here's where mystery begins. Now fast forward 800 years to Claudius Ptolemy's geography, a work so revolutionary it would dominate map-making for the next 14 centuries. Where the Babylonian map traded in allegory, Ptolemy dealt in coordinates. His genius was to impose order on chaos, plotting over 8,000 locations using a grid of latitude and longitude, a system we still rely on today. Imagine the audacity. Centuries before satellites, Ptolemy calculated the curvature of the Earth, proposed 3 different map projections to minimize distortion, and even included instructions for cartographers to correct errors in older maps. His Mediterranean coastlines were so accurate that Renaissance sailors found them reliable after 1,000 years of neglect. But Ptolemy's true legacy wasn't just precision, it was his willingness to admit uncertainty. Beyond the Roman Empire's borders, his map fades into speculative sketches with notes like unknown land or inhabited by nomads. The contrast between these two maps isn't just about accuracy, it's about worldview. The Babylonian tablet reflects a universe centered on divine authority, where cities exist in relation to gods, not grid lines. Ptolemy's work, though still flawed, heralds the birth of empirical science, where observation trumps tradition. Yet both share a quiet humility. The Babylonians drew their bitter river at the world's edge, a boundary beyond which knowledge failed. Ptolemy, too, left blanks where his data ran out. Together, they remind us that every map is a snapshot of what its creators dared to imagine: a balance of knowledge, guesswork, and the courage to say, "We don't know." The Zeno map is a cartographic ghost story, a 14th century Venetian puzzle that once fooled the entire European elite into believing in lands that never existed. At its heart lies Friesland, a phantom island drawn with such confidence that it appeared on maps for over 200 years, luring sailors to hunt for its non-existent shores. Named after the Zeno brothers, Venetian nobles who claimed to have sailed the North Atlantic in the 1300s, the map weaves together scraps of truth and wild fabrication. Greenland appears twice, once correctly placed, and again south of Iceland under the name in Groenland, twisted beyond recognition. The Faroe Islands balloon into an archipelago of fantasy, while mythical kingdoms like Estatiland and Drogeo hover at the map's edges, their names plucked from Norse sagas and travelers' tall tales. What makes the Zeno map so mesmerizing isn't just its errors, but how they reveal the psychology of exploration. The Zenos likely never ventured farther than the Mediterranean. Instead, scholars now believe they pieced together their voyages from second-hand accounts, blending genuine Norse charts with Venetian maritime rumors. Friesland, for instance, might be a distorted version of the Faroes, inflated by foggy memories or deliberate exaggeration to boost the brothers' prestige. Even the map's famed description of the North borrows heavily from earlier texts, with entire passages lifted from Icelandic chronicles, yet for centuries no one questioned it. The Zeno map became gospel, copied by cartographers from Mercator to Ortelius, its fictional lands stubbornly clinging to atlases until the 18th century. The real scandal: how these myths shaped history. English explorer Martin Frobisher nearly wrecked his fleet in 1578 searching for Friesland's promised harbors. Colonists plotted settlements on its shores, and kings included it in treaties. The map's distortions even fueled geopolitical drama. Denmark used Zeno's misplaced Greenland to challenge Norwegian territorial claims. This wasn't just bad geography, it was fiction altering reality, proof that maps could wield power even when they were wrong. Modern technology has peeled back the layers. Satellite imagery confirms Friesland's absence, while ocean floor mapping shows no sunken landmass where the Zeno brothers placed it. Yet the map endures as a cautionary tale, a reminder that every explorer's boast, every inked coastline, carries the weight of ambition and the risk of deception. In the end, the Zeno map isn't just a collection of mistakes. It's a mirror reflecting how easily desire can distort truth, and how a single line on parchment can send generations chasing shadows. The Waldseemüller map isn't just a historic artifact, it's a happy accident that shaped how we see the world forever. Printed in 1507 by German cartographer Martin Waldseemüller, this sweeping 12-panel masterpiece holds an astonishing first, the earliest known use of the name America on any map. But here's the twist: Waldseemüller didn't mean to name a continent. He was trying to honor Italian explorer Amerigo Vespucci, whose vivid accounts of the New World convinced him these lands weren't Asia, as Columbus insisted, but an entirely separate landmass. In a bold move, Waldseemüller labeled the southern continent America, feminizing Vespucci's first name to follow the conventions of other continent names like Asia and Africa. What makes this map revolutionary isn't just the name, it's the audacity of its vision. For the first time, the Pacific Ocean appears as a distinct body of water, decades before Europeans officially discovered it. Waldseemüller even separated the New World from Asia by a vast sea, a radical departure from the garbled geography of his peers. How did he know? Some historians suspect leaked Portuguese or Spanish charts, while others point to Vespucci's descriptions of indigenous accounts hinting at another ocean beyond the Americas. Yet the map's most fascinating detail is its own creator's regret. Within years, Waldseemüller realized he'd overestimated Vespucci's role and downplayed Columbus's legacy. By 1513, he tried scrubbing America from later editions, but it was too late. The name stuck, spreading like wildfire through printing presses across Europe. The original map vanished for centuries, only resurfacing in 1901 inside a German castle, where it had been tucked away in a forgotten portfolio. Today, the Waldseemüller map is a testament to how mistakes can rewrite history. A single label, meant as a tribute, became the identity of two continents, all because one cartographer dared to trust a controversial explorer's letters over the accepted dogma of his time. It's a reminder that maps don't just record the world, they shape it, sometimes in ways their creators never intended. Buried beneath the sands of time for millennia, the Turin Papyrus Map shatters our assumptions about ancient navigation. Dating back to 1150 BCE, this extraordinary document didn't chart distant lands or mythical realms. It served as a gritty, practical guide to Egypt's gold mines in the eastern desert. But don't let its mundane purpose fool you. This 3,000-year-old relic, painted on a fragile scroll of papyrus, is the world's oldest surviving topographic map, blending brutal realism with clever political theater. Unrolled today in Turin's Museo Egizio, the map reveals a landscape of startling precision. Wadi Hammamat, a critical mining region, unfolds in ochre and black ink, its dry riverbeds and jagged peaks rendered with an accuracy that rivals modern satellite imagery. Ancient scribes labeled quarries and gold deposits with hieroglyphic annotations, even marking distances between sites using units called itru, roughly 6.5 miles each. What's astonishing isn't just the detail, but the intent. This wasn't a decorative artifact, it was a working blueprint for Pharaoh Ramesses IV's expeditions, guiding laborers through treacherous terrain where water sources and shelter meant life or death. Yet the map's genius lies in its dual purpose. Alongside pragmatic notes about rock quality and well locations, symbols whisper a subtler story. A towering figure of Amun-Ra gazes down upon the mines, his presence transforming a mere logistical chart into a divine mandate. The message, every ounce of gold extracted, wasn't just royal wealth, it was the god's will legitimizing Ramesses' rule. Even the route itself becomes propaganda. By depicting the path as orderly and clearly marked, the map implies control over the chaotic desert, a narrative of stability meant for court officials as much as miners. The Turin Papyrus also hides a darker subtext. Recent infrared scans reveal erased sections, likely censoring secret routes to prevent rival factions from looting Egypt's treasures. Some scholars argue the map's errors, like exaggerated gold deposits near certain temples, were deliberate, designed to steer rival expeditions toward less lucrative areas. What emerges is a masterpiece of ancient statecraft, as politically savvy as it was geographically precise. It reminds us that maps have always been tools of power, shaping perception as much as they reflect reality. And in its fragile lines, we see the birth of an idea still potent today, that controlling the map means controlling the truth. The Kangnido Map shatters the myth of isolated medieval civilizations, revealing a world far more interconnected than history books suggest. Created in 1402 by Korean scholars under the Joseon dynasty, this sprawling 6-foot silk scroll fuses geographic knowledge from 3 continents into a single, audacious vision of the globe. At first glance, it's a chaotic tapestry. China looms disproportionately large, Africa contorts into a bloated triangle, and Europe squeezes into a sliver at the western edge. Yet hidden within these distortions lies a revelation. This was arguably the first world map to synthesize Chinese astronomical charts, Arab navigational data, and fragments of European missionary accounts into a single coherent image. What makes the Kangnido so groundbreaking isn't its accuracy, it's its sources. Korean envoys, part of a vast diplomatic network stretching from Kyoto to Samarkand, compiled reports from Muslim traders who'd crossed the Indian Ocean, Yuan dynasty officials who'd inherited Mongol Empire archives, and even Nestorian Christian monks carrying snippets of Ptolemaic geography. The result, a map where the Nile bends correctly toward the Red Sea, a detail even contemporary European maps botched, while the Mediterranean appears as a misshapen blob labeled Sea of the Franks. Africa's exaggerated southern tip hints at Arab knowledge of the continent's true scale, while the inclusion of Japan's Ryukyu Islands absent from Chinese maps of the era proves Korean mariners contributed first-hand observations. But the Kangnido's true enigma lurks south of Java, a vast, unnamed landmass floating like a ghost continent. Some scholars argue this reflects ancient Chinese legends of a southern land of fire, while others see echoes of Marco Polo's accounts of Java the Greater, a hypothesized southern empire. The most tantalizing theory, that Korean cartographers piecing together sailors' tales of Australian Aboriginal peoples or even Antarctic ice shelves, dared to document lands no formal expedition had yet reached. The map's political agenda is equally fascinating, by centering China drawn with flattering precision. While distorting its rivals, the Kangnido subtly reinforced Korea's Confucian worldview, where the Middle Kingdom anchored a hierarchical universe. Yet its very existence defies that order. The inclusion of Islamic and European elements, however flawed, reveals a quiet truth. Even in an era of rigid diplomacy, knowledge slipped through borders. The Kangnido wasn't just a map, It was a quiet rebellion, proof that the world refused to fit neatly into anyone's ideology. Today, its frayed silk whispers a lesson we're still learning, that every map, no matter how confident, is really just a question written in ink. The Vinland Map doesn't just depict Antarctica, it imagines it in ways that defy 18th century science, splitting the frozen continent into two islands divided by a vast inland sea. Published in 1737 by French geographer Philippe Vinland, this controversial chart wasn't based on direct exploration. No human had set foot on Antarctica's interior yet. Instead, Vinland used mathematical conjecture and a startling network of sources, including forgotten accounts of ancient seafarers. The result, a polar landmass eerily resembling what modern seismic surveys revealed in the 1970s, a submerged strait dividing East and West Antarctica beneath miles of ice. How could Vinland have known? Some theorists point to his academic rival, the astronomer Joseph Nicholas Delisle, who allegedly accessed Russian archives containing medieval Norse or Byzantine reports of a southern land. Others suggest Vinland pieced together fragments from lost medieval Arab maps, which occasionally showed a distorted southern continent labeled the Land of Darkness. But the most provocative theory involves the Piri Reis Map, yes, the same one we explored earlier. Vinland was rumored to have studied its depictions of an ice-free Antarctica, attempting to reconcile them with then-modern geography. His solution, a coastline that blends 18th century guesses with what looks suspiciously like ancient knowledge. The map's critics dismiss it as lucky speculation. They note Vinland's other glaring errors, like a phantom Sea of the West in North America, proving he wasn't infallible, yet the precision of his Antarctic split is hard to ignore. Modern subglacial topography shows a near-perfect match where Vinland's hypothesized sea aligns with today's confirmed transantarctic mountains and the Bayard subglacial basin. Even more haunting are his labels. Phrases like "lands glimpsed in fleeting thaws" suggest he worked from accounts of a time when Antarctica's coasts were less frozen, possibly echoing pre-Ice Age memories. The Vinland Map forces a chilling question. Did fragments of an ultra-ancient polar geography survive, passed down through civilizations until a French academic stitched them back together? Or is this merely a case of a brilliant cartographer gaming the limited data of his era? Either way, the map stands as a riddle wrapped in parchment, a reminder that sometimes the boldest guesses outpace the truth by centuries. The Vinland Map and the Ming Hun Map stand as polar opposites of Ming Dynasty cartography, one a sprawling testament to private commerce, the other a shadowy military asset locked behind palace gates. Painted around 1600, the Vinland Map is a vibrant explosion of ink and color, charting a web of trade routes from Japan to Java. Unlike stiff imperial atlases, this document thrums with life. Dotted lines trace bustling merchant paths, while annotations in colloquial Chinese detail tariffs, monsoon winds, and safe harbors. Scholars believe it was crafted by an anonymous Fujian merchant, his brushstrokes betraying first-hand knowledge of smuggling coves and backchannel deals. The map's most revolutionary feature, a precise compass grid aligned to magnetic north, a tool no known Chinese map had used before, likely borrowed from Portuguese or Arab navigators. Here, geography serves profit, not power. The Spice Islands bulge with cloves and nutmeg, while the Korean coast is reduced to a squiggle, irrelevant to the trader's calculus. Now contrast this with the Ming Hun Map, a classified naval artifact so sensitive it remained hidden for centuries. Part of the Wu Bei Zhai military encyclopedia, this scroll wasn't meant for open seas, it was a tactical blueprint for Zheng He's legendary treasure fleets. Where the Vinland Map celebrates openness, the Ming Hun oozes paranoia. Coastal defenses are marked with coded symbols, pirate nests circled in vermilion ink, and entire sections of the Indian Ocean left suspiciously blank, likely redacted to thwart spies. The difference in scale is jarring. Selden's world stretches to Arabia, while Mao Kun fixates on choke points like the Malacca Strait, where Ming warships could ambush enemy vessels. Even the artistry screams hierarchy. Rivers widen near imperial garrisons, while tributary states shrink to insignificance, yet both maps share a dark irony. The Selden map, though democratic in spirit, was captured by English privateers and languished in Oxford's Bodleian Library for centuries, plundered knowledge about to fuel European colonialism. The Mao Kun, despite its military genius, couldn't prevent the Ming dynasty's naval collapse after Zheng He's voyages were scrapped. Together, they embody a dynasty at war with itself, one hand grasping for global connection, the other clenched around secrets until both slipped through its fingers. The Oronce-Fenech world map of 1531 doesn't just challenge our expectations, it defies them with a boldness that still leaves historians breathless. At first glance, its most striking feature is the heart-shaped projection, a romanticized distortion that curves continents like petals around a stem. But the real mystery lies south of the equator, where Fenech sketched a massive, enigmatic landmass labeled Terra Australis. This wasn't just artistic flair. Fenech, a French mathematician and cartographer, insisted his work was rooted in forgotten records, possibly even ancient Greek or Phoenician texts hinting at a southern continent. What makes this map so controversial isn't just its shape, it's the eerie accuracy of its conjectures. While most 16th century maps dismissed the southern hemisphere as an empty void, Fenech's Terra Australis bears an uncanny resemblance to Antarctica's actual coastline. He depicted it with jagged bays and peninsulas, far more detailed than the vague blobs on contemporary charts. Even stranger, his latitude markings align with modern calculations, suggesting he had access to advanced astronomical data lost to time. Skeptics argue it's pure coincidence, pointing to Fenech's admitted reliance on Ptolemy's flawed geography and Marco Polo's exaggerated travelogues. But believers counter with a tantalizing clue. Fenech's personal notes mention secret charts held by Venetian merchants, possibly salvaged from the library of Alexandria's ashes. The heart-shaped projection itself is a masterpiece of Renaissance ingenuity. Unlike the rigid grids of his peers, Fenech's design accounted for the Earth's curvature, distributing distortion more evenly, a concept centuries ahead of its time. Yet for all its innovation, the map is riddled with deliberate omissions. The western coast of North America fades into ambiguity, as if Fenech knew enough to hint at the Pacific's vastness but not enough to chart it. Meanwhile, the Indian Ocean is bizarrely landlocked, a Ptolemaic-era Fenech curiously retained. Was Terra Australis inspired by genuine ancient knowledge, or was it a mathematical guess wrapped in artistic license? The debate rages on. Some scholars suggest Fenech might have pieced together clues from Polynesian oral histories or Arabic navigators who'd ventured south of Java. Others propose he simply extrapolated from Magellan's recent circumnavigation, inferring a southern land to balance the globe's weight, but the most haunting theory. That Fenech's map captures whispers of a pre-Ice Age civilization that mapped Antarctica before it froze, a thought that turns this heart-shaped enigma into a potential time capsule of lost human achievement. Whether fantasy or forgotten truth, the Oronce-Fenech map reminds us that the best cartographers weren't just draftsmen. They were detectives, stitching together fragments of knowledge into visions that still challenge our understanding of the past. And in its delicate curves and cryptic southern contours, it poses a question we've yet to answer. How much did our ancestors truly know about the world, and how much have we forgotten? The Hereford Mappa Mundi isn't just a map, it's a medieval masterpiece where faith and geography collide in a breathtaking swirl of ink and vellum. Created around 1300, this colossal 5-foot-tall artwork stretches across a single sheet of calfskin, inviting viewers into a world where biblical history and earthly landscapes intertwine. At first glance, it follows the traditional TO design, a circle divided by rivers and seas into 3 continents symbolizing the lands of Noah's sons. But look closer and the details dazzle. Jerusalem sits precisely at the center, not because it was geographically accurate, but because it was spiritually supreme, the axis around which medieval Christianity believed the universe revolved. Europe, Africa, and Asia sprawl outward, their boundaries warped to fit theological narratives rather than navigational needs. What makes the Mappa Mundi so mesmerizing isn't just its distortions, it's the stories crammed into every inch. The Garden of Eden perches at the top, guarded by a fiery angel, while the Red Sea bleeds onto the parchment in literal scarlet paint. Myth and reality blur seamlessly. Elephants and camels share space with headless, Blemii warriors and dog-faced cynosphali, creatures lifted from ancient Roman legends and travelers' tall tales. Even more striking are the annotations' tiny Latin labels explaining everything from the location of the Tower of Babel to where Alexander the Great supposedly built a wall to cage the monstrous Gog and Magog. This wasn't just a map for travelers, it was a visual encyclopedia, a pilgrimage of the mind for those who'd never leave their villages. Yet beneath the fantastical veneer lies a surprising thread of real-world knowledge. The Nile curves with recognizable accuracy, its delta fanning out much as it does in modern atlases. Cities like Rome and Paris appear roughly where they should be, proof that medieval scholars weren't entirely ignorant of spatial relationships. The map even hints at global connections, a nod to Marco Polo's recent travels along the Silk Road, with notes about the Great Khan's palace in Cathay. The Mappa Mundi's true brilliance, though, is how it mirrors the medieval mind. Time isn't linear here, it's layered. Biblical events coexist with contemporary landmarks, suggesting history was a living tapestry where past and present were eternally entwined. When a pilgrim traced their finger from England to Jerusalem, they weren't just planning a journey, they were reenacting sacred history, walking in the footsteps of prophets and apostles. Today, this fragile artifact survives in Hereford Cathedral, a testament to an era when maps weren't just tools but acts of devotion. It challenges us to see the world through medieval eyes, where every mountain might hide a dragon, every river could lead to Eden, and faith wasn't just a compass but the very ground beneath your feet. In its inked lines and golden flourishes, the Mappa Mundi whispers a truth we often forget, that every map, no matter how accurate, is ultimately a portrait of the culture that drew it. Hidden in the archives of Yale University lies a map that may have altered the course of history, the Martellus Map of 1491. Painted by German cartographer Henricus Martellus, this stunning work dazzles with its vibrant colors and intricate details, but beneath the artistry lurk distortions so profound they might have sent Christopher Columbus sailing toward a fateful mistake. At first glance, the map seems a triumph of Renaissance geography. Europe and Africa sprawl across the parchment with newfound precision, and the Indian Ocean teems with islands labeled from Arab and Persian trader accounts. But focus on Asia and the flaws leap out. Martellus exaggerated the continent's eastward stretch by nearly 30%, placing Japan a staggering 1,000 miles closer to Europe than it truly lies. Worse yet, he squeezed the Pacific Ocean into a narrow channel, as if China and Spain were neighbors separated by a mere pond. Why does this matter? Because Columbus carried a copy, or one strikingly similar, when he set sail in 1492. Scholars have traced his handwritten notes in the margins, fixated on Martellus's inflated measurements. When Columbus reached the Caribbean, he didn't think he'd found a new world. He believed he'd arrived at Martellus's bloated Asia, with Japan just over the horizon. This miscalculation wasn't just a navigational hiccup, it reshaped empires. Armed with the map's errors, Columbus convinced Spanish monarchs to fund more voyages, certain that gold-rich Cathay lay a short sail away. Had Martellus drawn Asia to scale, would Columbus have risked the journey, or might Spain have abandoned the quest, leaving the Americas unexplored for decades? The Martellus map's distortions didn't stop at Asia. Africa's southern tip bends oddly eastward, a detail later copied by Martin Waldseemüller in his famous 1507 world map. This quirk may explain why Portuguese explorer Bartolomeu Dias initially underestimated the distance to India, believing he could loop around Africa faster than reality allowed. Even the Indian Ocean's islands, many pure conjecture, became targets for failed expeditions, draining European treasuries in pursuit of Martellus's phantom geography. Yet the map isn't just a catalogue of errors, its brilliance lies in what it got right. Martellus incorporated recent Portuguese voyages around Africa, sketching the continent's west coast with startling accuracy. His rivers and mountain ranges align with modern satellite imagery, proving he had access to cutting-edge reports. This duality, precision mixed with fantasy, reveals the fragile state of knowledge in the age of exploration. Mapmakers like Martellus weren't just copying facts, they were stitching together fragments of truth, rumor, and myth, creating a patchwork that navigators trusted with their lives. Today, multispectral imaging has peeled back centuries of fading ink, exposing hidden texts and erased drafts beneath the map's surface. These discoveries confirm Martellus revised his work constantly, wrestling with conflicting sources. In one poignant scribble, he admits uncertainty about a coastline, writing, "Some say it bends thus, others disagree." That single line captures the agony and ambition of Renaissance cartography, a field where every stroke of the pen could rewrite destiny. The Martellus map reminds us that history isn't shaped just by explorers' courage, but by the fragile parchment that guided them into the unknown. The Urbano Monti map of 1587 isn't just a relic, it's a mad, magnificent fever dream of Renaissance ambition. Picture this: 60 hand-painted pages stitched into a single, spiraling masterpiece, designed to be viewed as a rotating disc from the North Pole's vantage point. At a time when most maps flattened the world into two dimensions, Italian nobleman Urbano Monti envisioned a planet alive with motion, its continents bending toward the viewer as if seen from the heavens. This wasn't cartography, it was theater, a dizzying fusion of science and art that predated modern 3D modeling by 4 centuries. Monti's obsession bled into every brushstroke. He didn't just chart coastlines, he painted them with texture, shading mountain ranges to cast shadows and inking ocean currents that seemed to swirl off the parchment. His polar projection, a radical choice for the era, forced viewers to confront Earth's spherical truth head-on, quite literally placing the Arctic at the center of the known universe. But the real marvel lies in the details. Japan's coastline mirrors Jesuit missionary reports with eerie precision, while California floats oddly detached from North America, reflecting rumors of an island passage not yet disproven. Even the Antarctic rim, though wildly speculative, hints at a landmass Monti believed must exist to balance the globe's weight, a theory ancient Greeks had proposed but few dared to illustrate. What sets this map apart isn't just its technical daring, it's Monti's relentless drive to harmonize disciplines. He crammed margins with astronomical charts, zodiac signs, and even a climate classification system, convinced that geography without celestial context was meaningless. His depiction of Africa's interior, though fanciful, burst with ethnographic notes on kingdoms like Monomotapa, gleaned from Portuguese traders' whispered accounts. Yet for all its scholarly rigor, the map also indulged pure whimsy. Sea monsters with ruby-red eyes coiled near Iceland, while an elephant carrying a castle on its back paraded through Southeast Asia, a nod to Marco Polo's tall tales. Monti's grand vision had one fatal flaw: no printing press could replicate its complexity in his lifetime. The 60-page manuscript gathered dust in Milanese archives, its spiral-bound secrets forgotten until modern scholars reassembled it. Today, digitization reveals even wilder layers: fold-out volvels rotating paper instruments to calculate eclipses, and a hidden compass rose aligning not to magnetic north, but to Jerusalem, a quiet nod to medieval piety lingering in the Renaissance mind. The Urbano Monte map is more than a historical curiosity. It's a bridge between eras where Ptolemy's grids collide with Galileo's soon-to-rise stars. In its painted oceans and collaged knowledge, we see a man straining to capture the world's chaos in ink and order, and falling just gloriously short. Some call it the first attempt at an interactive atlas, others see a prophetic glimpse of Google Earth, but perhaps it's simply proof that every map, no matter how ambitious, is really a self-portrait of its maker's boundless imagination. The Catalan Atlas and the Miller Atlas aren't just maps, they're Renaissance power plays dressed in gold and monsters. Crafted within decades of each other, these two masterpieces reveal a world teetering between medieval mysticism and the ruthless calculus of empire. The Catalan Atlas, created in 1375 by the Jewish cartographer Cresques Abraham, is a six-panel explosion of color and symbolism. Commissioned by the King of Aragon, it wasn't meant for navigation. This was a diplomatic weapon, a visual boast of Europe's growing reach, meant to dazzle rival courts. Every inch drips with intention. West Africa's gold routes glow under delicate gold leaf, while the Mali Emperor Mansa Musa, the richest man in history, sits enthroned holding a nugget the size of his fist. The Sahara isn't just blank space, it's a theater of trade crawling with camel caravans and Berber merchants, but it's the sea that steals the show. Ships with billowing sails navigate swirling currents, while sea monsters lurk with emerald scales and dagger teeth. These weren't mere decorations, they marked the edges of known territory, a warning where knowledge faded into fear. Even the winds get personality, depicted as cherubs blowing gales from puffed cheeks. Yet hidden in the artistry are startling accuracies. The atlas shows the Canary Islands with precision, hinting at secret Portuguese voyages years before official discovery. And that snaking river of gold in West Africa, it matches real gold bearing tributaries modern geologists wouldn't document for centuries. Now turn to the Miller Atlas of 1519, a Portuguese counterpart dripping with even more imperial swagger. Made for King Manuel I, it's a visual manifesto of the age of exploration. Where the Catalan Atlas hinted at trade, the Miller screams conquest. Brazil's newly discovered coast is already studded with Portuguese flags, while the Indian Ocean swarms with carracks and spice routes. The monsters here aren't just warnings, they're obstacles overcome. One vignette shows a Portuguese ship battling a giant lobster-clawed beast, symbolizing mastery over the unknown. The map's margins burst with ethnographic sketches, Persian nobles in turbans, Sumatran hunters with blowguns, even a fabled Christian king, Prester John, lurking in Africa's heart. Every image screams, we've mapped them, so we'll rule them. Yet the most telling difference lies in their treatment of Africa. The Catalan Atlas paints Timbuktu as a glittering metropolis equal to Paris or Venice. The Miller reduces it to a stockade surrounded by spear-wielding savages. In just a century, cartography had shifted from documenting wonders to justifying domination. Both atlases used art to seduce, one luring merchants, the other legitimizing colonization. Today, their gold leaf still gleams, but the true legacy lies in the lines they drew between myth and mastery, between seeing the world and seizing it. Buried beneath layers of medieval palimpsests and tucked away in monastic libraries, the map of Agathodemon whispers tantalizing fragments of Rome's lost geographic mastery. Named after the mythical serpent deity of good fortune, this first-century marvel wasn't just a navigational tool, it was the GPS of the Roman Empire, stitching together military roads, trade hubs, and hidden river passages with a precision that would make modern strategists envious. Though only scraps survive today, scholars have painstakingly reconstructed sections that reveal a chilling truth. This may have been the map Julius Caesar consulted during his Gallic Wars, or the blueprint Mark Antony used to navigate the treacherous supply lines of the East. What sets Agathodemon apart from later Roman maps like the Peutinga Table is its brutal pragmatism. Unearthed fragments show not just cities, but grain storage depots stamped with military seals, narrow mountain passes annotated with seasonal flood risks, and coastal trading posts color-coded by the loyalty of local tribes. One crumbling segment, now housed in the Vatican archives, depicts the Rhine frontier with symbols marking ambush hotspots and cavalry-friendly terrain, details no civilian merchant would need. Another scrap, discovered lining a 15th-century reliquary, plots the shortest overland route from Alexandria to Damascus, complete with wells marked in cipher. This wasn't geography for scholars, it was intelligence for conquerors. The map's secrets deepen when we examine its potential creators. Ancient historians like Strabo mention Agathodemon as Alexandria's most celebrated cartographer, a Greek-Egyptian scholar rumored to have accompanied Roman legions on campaigns to sketch landscapes in real time. His techniques were revolutionary. Instead of relying solely on traveler accounts, he supposedly used portable sundials and water clocks to calculate distances, creating the empire's first scientific maps. But the real genius lay in his adaptations. When fragments were discovered near Hadrian's Wall in the 1920s, archaeologists found symbols matching Caesar's own campaign diaries, like a tiny dagger glyph denoting sites of mass executions, a grim corroboration of written histories. Trade routes tell another story. A surviving portion tracing the Amber Road from the Baltic to the Adriatic includes marginal notes in Aramaic, suggesting Jewish silk traders collaborated with Roman surveyors to update commercial choke points. Even more telling are the phantom roads lines stretching into the Sahara or the Russian steppes that don't align with any known Roman construction. Some historians argue these represent spy networks or tributary paths to nomadic allies. Others think they're deliberate misinformation, inserted to mislead enemies who stole copies. The map's legacy haunts modern archaeology. When researchers superimposed Agathodemon's fragments onto satellite imagery, they found eerie correlations. A dashed line in a Spanish segment matches a later discovered Roman subterranean aqueduct, while a cluster of dots in Germania aligns perfectly with recent excavations of forgotten marching camps. This level of accuracy suggests the Romans possessed institutional geographic knowledge far beyond what survived the empire's fall, knowledge that may have evaporated when the Library of Alexandria burned, taking Agathodemon's master copies with it. Speculation swirls around what's still missing. A 9th-century monk's chronicle mentions a serpent map in Constantinople's imperial archives that showed the world as the legions saw it, including a detailed Britain with tin mines the Romans never publicly acknowledged. Could this be Agathodemon's lost centerpiece, or was it, like so much ancient wisdom, reduced to ashes or recycled into parchment for biblical texts? What remains is a ghostly jigsaw, one that forces us to reconsider how much the ancients truly knew and how much we've only pretended to rediscover. The Bianco map of 1436 hides its secrets in plain sight, a masterpiece of Venetian cartography laced with deliberate lies and cryptic hints. Drawn by Andrea Bianco, a sailor-turned-mapmaker, this stunning vellum chart pulses with intrigue, especially in its rendering of the Atlantic Ocean. Amid the azure washes and gilded compass roses, clusters of phantom islands dot the waters west of Portugal and Africa. Some bear familiar names like Antillia and Sataneses, while others float unnamed, their coastlines sketched with suspicious precision. These weren't navigational errors, they were calculated distractions, a smokescreen to veil Portugal's most explosive discoveries during the early years of Prince Henry the Navigator's expeditions. Look closer and the map's deception unravels. The so-called Isle of Satan, Sataneses, lurks near the Azores, its jagged edges mirroring real volcanic formations too accurate to be pure myth. Historians note that Bianco collaborated closely with Portuguese pilots, men sworn to secrecy under penalty of death. Could these fake islands actually be coded markers for real archipelagos like the Cape Verde or Canary Islands, whose locations Lisbon guarded like state secrets? The timing is damning. Within decades of Bianco's map, Portuguese caravels were indeed colonizing these exact latitudes. Even more telling are the distances between these phantom lands, which align uncannily with trade wind routes later used to slingshot ships toward West Africa. But Bianco's genius lies in his sleight of hand. By mixing genuine geographic knowledge with outrageous fictions like an island inhabited by devil birds, he created a plausible deniability shield. Rival powers like Castile or Genoa would dismiss the entire Atlantic section as fantasy, never guessing that buried within the nonsense were breadcrumbs to Portugal's lucrative slave and gold trades. The map's coastal details betray this dual purpose. While Africa's interior spills over with mythical creatures, its western shoreline is rendered with military-grade accuracy, down to river mouths ideal for hiding ships. Bianco even smuggled in a truth only the Portuguese could decode. A tiny cross near Cape Bojador marks the spot where explorer Gil Eanes finally sailed beyond the Sea of Darkness in 1434, a milestone Lisbon had kept strictly confidential. Modern technology peels back another layer. Multispectral imaging reveals erased pencil lines beneath the ink, showing Bianco originally plotted more islands before scrubbing them, perhaps after his Portuguese handlers objected. One ghostly shape matches Madeira's coordinates, an archipelago the Portuguese were then settling in secret. Even the parchment itself whispers clues. It's made from lambskin imported through Lisbon's trade networks, a material too costly for mere fantasy maps. The Bianco map is more than art, it's a conspiracy in calfskin. Its errors were carefully crafted to mislead rivals while guiding initiates toward empire-building truths. In that delicate dance between revelation and obfuscation, we see the birth of modern geopolitical espionage, where maps weren't just guides, but weapons in a silent war for control of the unknown. The map of Juan de la Cosa isn't just a historical artifact, it's a silent witness to the greatest cartographic cover-up of the age of exploration. Painted in 1500 by Christopher Columbus's own navigator, this sprawling oxhide parchment holds the distinction of being the oldest surviving map to depict the Americas. But don't let its vibrant colors and intricate compass roses fool you. Beneath the artistry lies a web of deliberate omissions and strategic gaps, raising explosive questions about what the Spanish crown didn't want the world to see. At first glance, the map dazzles with its detail. The Caribbean islands Columbus discovered sprawl across the vellum, their contours sketched with the confidence of someone who'd sailed those waters firsthand. Cuba appears as an island, a fact Columbus stubbornly denied until his death, insisting it was part of the Asian mainland. Yet the map's true intrigue lies in its blank spaces. The northern coastline of South America dissolves into vague, unfinished strokes, as if de la Cosa's brush hesitated to reveal too much, even more telling. The complete absence of the Pacific Ocean, which wouldn't appear on European maps for another 13 years, was this ignorance or was it censorship? Scholars have long debated the map's strange inconsistencies. De la Cosa, a seasoned mariner who'd survived 2 of Columbus's voyages, knew more than he let on. His personal logs mention encounters with indigenous traders who spoke of a great water beyond the Isthmus of Panama, yet no such sea appears here. Some historians argue this wasn't an oversight but a tactical erasure. Spain, embroiled in a cutthroat race with Portugal for global dominance, had every reason to hide potential routes to Asia's spice wealth. The Treaty of Tordesillas had just split the world between the two powers along a meridian west of the Cape Verde Islands. If de la Cosa hinted at undiscovered passages, rival nations might beat Spain to the prize. The map's treatment of Africa fuels these suspicions. While the Caribbean is meticulously detailed, the West African coast, a region Portugal controlled, is oddly compressed, with key trading ports either misplaced or missing entirely. Was de la Cosa downplaying Portugal's holdings to discourage Spanish competitors, or were these errors planted to mislead spies? Even the map's materials hint at secrecy. Unlike typical portolan charts of the era, which used durable vellum, de la Cosa's map was painted on fragile oxhide, as if designed for limited use before disposal. Yet the most tantalizing clue lies in what the map almost included. Infrared scans reveal ghostly pencil lines beneath the paint sketches of landmasses later scrubbed away. One matches the Yucatan Peninsula, which Spanish ships wouldn't officially discover for another 17 years. Another traces the mouth of the Amazon, a river whose existence Columbus had suspected but never confirmed. These erased features suggest de la Cosa had access to intelligence far beyond his publicly documented voyages, perhaps from undocumented expeditions or indigenous informants guiding Spanish scouts off the record. The map's survival only deepens the mystery. Of the hundreds of charts produced during this era, why was this one preserved? Some believe it was a presentation piece gifted to King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella to showcase their empire's potential, while carefully editing out its vulnerabilities. Others speculate it was a master copy, its blanks and distortions serving as a template for future maps, ensuring only approved geography reached the public. Today, the map of Juan de la Cosa hangs in Madrid's Naval Museum, its vibrant hues faded but its enigma undimmed. It forces us to confront an uncomfortable truth. The maps that shaped history weren't just records of discovery, they were instruments of power where every line drawn or erased carried the weight of empire. In its silent margins and vanished coastlines, we catch a glimpse of the shadow world behind the age of exploration, a world of guarded knowledge, where the truth was often the most closely held treasure of all. Deep in the highlands of Bolivia lies an artifact so controversial, it blurs the lines between continents and epochs, the Fuente Magna Bowl. Discovered near Lake Titicaca in the 1950s, this carved stone vessel resembles a humble ceremonial dish at first glance. But tilt it toward the light, and its surface explodes with intricate markings that have ignited one of archaeology's fiercest debates. Are these grooves mere decorations, or could they be fragments of a lost map, or worse, an elaborate forgery designed to rewrite history? The inscriptions are what set scholars at each other's throats. Some researchers swear they've identified Proto-Sumerian cuneiform, the wedge-shaped writing of ancient Mesopotamia, etched alongside geometric patterns that mirror Andean weaving motifs. If genuine, this would imply a transoceanic connection between the Middle East and South America over 4,000 years ago, centuries before mainstream history claims such contact was possible. One tantalizing glyph appears to depict a boat with sails, while another resembles the Sumerian symbol for divine road, often associated with celestial navigation. Could these be directions, a mariner's guide hidden in plain sight? But the skeptics strike back with equal ferocity. They point to the bowl's murky provenance. It was allegedly found by a local farmer with no documented excavation, and the odd juxtaposition of symbols. The cuneiform lacks the systematic spacing of authentic Mesopotamian scripts, and some signs appear backwards or inverted, as if copied carelessly from a textbook. Radiocarbon dating is impossible without organic material, leaving the bowl's age guesswork at best. Even the geometric designs, hailed by some as encoded terrain features, might just be stylistic flourishes common to indigenous Bolivian pottery. The plot thickens when you examine who benefits. In the 1960s, a Yugoslavian ethnologist named Maximilian Drennan became the bowl's most vocal champion, publishing wild theories about pre-Columbian Sumerian colonies. His timing was suspicious. Bolivia's government, eager to boost tourism, suddenly declared the artifact a national treasure. Coincidence or calculated myth-making? Modern linguists note that Drennan's translations often relied on outdated Sumerian dictionaries, twisting meanings to fit his narrative, yet the bowl refuses to be dismissed. In 2018, a team from the University of San Andreas used 3D imaging to analyze the grooves under microscopic detail. Their findings, the carvings show where patterns consistent with centuries of ritual use, not modern tools. Even more intriguing, the depth and angle of the inscriptions suggest multiple authors across generations, as if the bowl was a living document added to over time. What are we to make of this enigma? If the Fuente Magna bowl is genuine, it hints at a Silk Road of the ancient seas, where traders or explorers bridged worlds we never knew were connected. If it's a hoax, it's a masterclass in deception, exposing how easily nationalism and wishful thinking can distort archaeology. Either way, the bowl sits quietly in La Paz's Museum of Precious Metals, its whispers just loud enough to keep us questioning not just the past, but who gets to interpret it. The CIA's Ancient Earth project sounds like something ripped from a spy thriller because it was. Declassified documents reveal that during the height of the Cold War, while the world fixated on nuclear standoffs and space races, intelligence analysts were quietly piecing together fragments of ancient maps, attempting to reconstruct lost knowledge of prehistoric landscapes. But this wasn't academic curiosity. The agency's interest hinged on a chilling possibility that long-forgotten civilizations might have documented geological or astronomical secrets with strategic value. Among the recovered files, one memo stands out. Dated 1964, it details Operation Climate, a clandestine effort to cross-reference medieval Portolan charts with declassified U-2 spy plane imagery. The goal, to identify geographic anomalies, places where ancient cartographers seemingly knew terrain features that modern maps had overlooked. One case study focused on a 12th century Arabic atlas showing a river delta in the Sahara that hadn't flowed in millennia. Satellite reconnaissance later confirmed its dried-up bed, buried under centuries of sand. Another file describes analysts scouring Ptolemy's coordinates for vanished mountain passes in the Hindu Kush, theorizing that forgotten trade routes could offer alternative infiltration paths into Soviet-aligned Afghanistan. But why would intelligence operatives care about dusty old maps? The answer lies in the margins. Many of these documents contained cryptic annotations, symbols marking mineral deposits, underground springs, or even celestial events like comet strikes. A 1972 briefing note speculates that Bronze Age mariners might have recorded magnetic anomalies in the Atlantic, knowledge that could theoretically help submarines navigate without detection. Even more provocative were the redacted sections in a 1981 report titled Ancient Topographic Precedents, which referenced possible artificial structures aligned with solstice lines in regions the CIA had flagged for surveillance. The project's most controversial claim emerged from a footnote in a 1991 archive dump. Analysts had stumbled upon a correlation between Mayan star charts and uranium-rich zones in Central America, leading to a classified dig near Guatemala's Mirador Basin. While the official report cites inconclusive findings, independent researchers later uncovered CIA-fronted expeditions to the same area, disguised as archaeological teams. Coincidence or evidence that the agency believed ancient cultures had mapped resources modern science was only beginning to exploit? What makes this more than just Cold War paranoia is the lingering question of what wasn't declassified. Former analysts have hinted in interviews that the real prize wasn't physical locations, but patterns recurring alignments between sacred sites and gravitational or electromagnetic anomalies. One retired operative, speaking on condition of anonymity, described a vault holding clay tablets from Mesopotamia, their cuneiform inscriptions allegedly matching underground water reserves in the Middle East. If true, it suggests the CIA wasn't just studying history, they were mining it for tactical advantage, treating ancient mapmakers as unwitting intelligence assets. The ultimate irony, many of these reconstructed maps were later found to contain errors, but not the kind you'd expect. They weren't primitive mistakes. They were deliberate omissions, like medieval monks erasing coastlines to protect trade secrets or Ottoman admirals skewing coordinates to mislead rivals. In trying to weaponize the past, the CIA may have stumbled onto a timeless truth. Maps have always been instruments of power, and some secrets are buried not in the land but in the hands that drew them. LiDAR scans and artificial intelligence are peeling back centuries of wear and tear on these ancient maps, revealing secrets their makers never intended us to see. Take the famous martiroless map, the same one that may have misled Columbus. For decades, scholars squinted at its faded ink, unable to read crucial passages about Africa and Asia. Then, in 2016, researchers at Yale bombarded it with multispectral imaging, a technique that captures light wavelengths beyond human vision. Suddenly, hidden text shimmered into view, forgotten Portuguese sailing directions, corrections scribbled in margins, even ghostly coastlines erased and redrawn. One previously invisible note near the Indian Ocean reads, "Beyond here, dragons and gold," a tantalizing clue that mapmakers knew more than they dared commit to parchment. AI is taking this detective work even further. A team at Stanford trained algorithms to analyze the Waldseemüller map's controversial America label, comparing its lettering style to thousands of medieval manuscripts. The verdict: the name wasn't added later. It was original, confirming Waldseemüller truly meant to christen the continent. Meanwhile, in Spain, machine learning deciphered smudged annotations on Juan de la Cosa's map, uncovering coordinates that match secret Spanish landing sites in Panama, a smoking gun for unrecorded expeditions years before Balboa discovered the Pacific. But the real game changer is LiDAR's ability to resurrect maps that no longer exist. When archaeologists scanned a 16th century monastery in Portugal, they detected microscopic ink traces on a palimpsest, a reused parchment where monks had scraped away an older map to write prayers. The original, it turned out, was a nautical chart of the Azores, complete with depth soundings the Portuguese crown had ordered destroyed to protect trade routes. Similarly, AI pattern recognition software reassembled charred fragments from the library of Alexandria's ruins, identifying what may be copies of Agathodaemon's lost Roman military maps based on road angles and distance markers. The most spine-tingling revelations come from combining these technologies. At Oxford's Bodleian Library, spectral imaging paired with neural networks reconstructed an entire shadow map beneath the surface of the Selden map of China, a draft version showing alternate spice routes through Indonesia, with warnings about pirate strongholds written in vanishing ink. Even more astonishing, LiDAR scans of the Turin Papyrus exposed hidden grid lines beneath its gold mine illustrations, proving the Egyptians used advanced surveying math 3,000 years ago. These tools aren't just solving old puzzles, they're exposing how often maps lied. The Zeno map's phantom Friesland, long dismissed as pure fiction, now appears to contain distorted but recognizable snippets of Greenland's actual coastline, suggesting the brothers worked from real, if garbled, sources. And in a Swiss vault, X-ray fluorescence revealed that the uncharted gaps on a 15th century Medici sea chart were deliberate. Someone had chemically scrubbed islands to create fake, unknown waters for political leverage. What emerges is a new golden age of cartographic archaeology, where technology strips away the veils of time, propaganda, and human error. Each scan, each algorithm whispers the same truth: these maps were never static records. They were living documents, edited, censored, and repurposed in the shadows. Now, after centuries of silence, science is finally letting them speak. What if these maps aren't just isolated anomalies, but fragments of a forgotten global network? The eerie overlaps between distant cultures' cartography, Antarctica's coastline on the Piri Reis Map matching modern surveys, the Fuente Magna bowls possible Sumerian links to South America, even the Kangnido Map's fusion of Arab, Chinese, and European knowledge raise a spine-tingling possibility. Could a pre-Ice Age civilization have circumnavigated the globe, leaving behind geographic breadcrumbs? Mainstream archaeology dismisses the idea, pointing to the lack of physical evidence like shipwrecks or settlements, but the maps whisper otherwise. Take the shared distortions. The Waldseemüller and Martellus maps both exaggerate Asia's eastern stretch, while the Cantino Planisphere skews Africa's southern tip. Errors too specific to be coincidence. Could these stem from a common source, a master chart copied and corrupted over millennia? Ancient historians like Strabo wrote of the Library of Alexandria's maps from conquered lands, suggesting the Romans inherited geographic knowledge from even older empires. If so, did the library's flames in 48 BCE incinerate the last surviving copies of a global atlas, leaving only garbled echoes in later works? The celestial connections deepen the mystery. The Oron-Sphene and Buach maps both depict Antarctica with uncanny polar projections, yet their creators lived centuries apart and had no access to satellite data. Even more bizarre, the Ming Hun Yi Tu aligns sacred Chinese mountains with constellations in patterns matching Inca sky maps. How could cultures separated by oceans and epochs share such precise astronomical correlations? Some theorists propose a lost maritime culture, perhaps the seafaring sea peoples mentioned in Egyptian texts who traded not just goods but geographic intelligence across continents. Others speculate these similarities stem from an even older, advanced civilization wiped clean by a cataclysm 12,000 years ago, leaving only scattered maps as cryptic memorials. Yet the skeptics have compelling counters. Human minds, they argue, tend to find patterns where none exist: a coastline here, a star alignment there, all dismissed as selective bias. They point to the Zeno map's Phantom Islands as proof of how easily myths creep into cartography. And if a global civilization existed, where are its cities, its tools, its bones? But this overlooks archaeology's blind spots. Rising sea levels since the last ice age have submerged vast coastal regions where early seafarers might have settled. Sites like Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, dating back 11,000 years, prove complex societies existed earlier than we once believed. What else lies buried under jungle shifts or polar ice? The most unsettling question isn't whether these maps are connected, it's why the connections were erased. The CIA's Cold War excavations hint at how easily knowledge can be buried for power. The Vatican's secret archives allegedly hold hundreds of uncatalogued medieval maps, while the Chinese Emperor Qin Shi Huang notoriously burned geographic texts to consolidate control. History, as they say, is written by the victors, but maps may hold the lost voices of the silenced. As technology peels back layers of ink and vellum, revealing hidden notes and erased lands, we're forced to confront a humbling truth. Our understanding of the past is a patchwork stitched together from fragments survivors chose to preserve. Every match between an ancient chart and modern topography, every shared symbol across oceans, chips away at the timeline we thought was fixed. The maps don't just document the world, they haunt it, whispering of missing chapters in humanity's story. And until we find the next clue, they'll keep daring us to redraw history. From the Piri Reis Map's ice-free Antarctica to the Fuente Magna Bowl's transatlantic riddles, these 25 ancient cartographic wonders don't just challenge history, they shatter it. Each one forces us to confront unsettling gaps in the official narrative. How did medieval monks chart stars with pinpoint accuracy? Why do Bronze Age artifacts hint at global trade routes millennia before Columbus? And who were the shadowy mapmakers who seemingly possessed knowledge that shouldn't have existed for centuries? Collectively, they paint a picture of a past far more interconnected and far stranger than textbooks dare admit. Consider the patterns. Multiple maps across different eras and cultures share uncanny distortions, like the recurring Phantom Islands that later explorers chased in vain. The CIA's Cold War excavations and modern LiDAR scans reveal how often critical details were erased or concealed. turning these documents into palimpsests of power. Even the mistakes tell a story, whether it's Martellus inflating Asia to mislead rivals or the Ming dynasty shrinking Europe to the size of a footnote. This isn't just about geography, it's about who controls the narrative of human achievement. So where does this leave us? If these maps are clues, then history as we know it is a puzzle missing half its pieces. Maybe advanced seafaring cultures rose and fell during the last ice age, leaving only cryptic charts behind. Maybe secret knowledge survived in monastery vaults or royal libraries passed down through coded symbols. Or perhaps, as the CIA feared, our ancestors mapped natural resources and cosmic events we're only now rediscovering. Whatever the truth, one thing's clear: humanity's past is a mosaic we've barely begun to assemble. Now it's your turn. Which of these maps shook your understanding of the past? Was it the Kangnido's audacious fusion of 3 continents' knowledge, or the Turin Papyrus's brutal pragmatism? Drop your favorites in the comments, and while you're at it, share the historical mysteries that keep you up at night, because this journey isn't over. Next time, we're diving into the ruins of cities that vanished without a trace, places where even the maps went silent. Until then, keep questioning. After all, the past never stops surprising us.